Whether you have the latest Canon R5 Mark II, an older 5D Mark II, or any cinema camera that can utilize EF glass, these are the lenses that I'd recommend to snap up right now before they get crazy expensive. With the EF lens lineup being the most extensive in the world, let's start with a true workhorse, a lens I've owned for a very long time and is one of my most rented lenses to productions. Surprisingly, it's the Canon EF 24-105 F4 L IS USM, which is one of the best all-rounder L series kit lenses Canon has ever made. It covers a lot of bases, and that's why it's always in my camera bag. Granted, it's not that fast at F4, but modern sensors have come a long way with cleaner, usable higher ISOs than say 20 years ago when this lens was released. Plus, most cinema cameras are still using smaller than full-frame sensors, and when you start to factor in the rise and widespread adoption of speed boosters over the last decade, combined with the other features the lens has to offer, you just shouldn't pass it up. But even without a speed booster, this lens is a solid choice for landscapes, portraits, and macro work where, say, more depth of field is desirable. And for videographers, because of its 24-105 range, it will save you a lot of time on set from having to swing lenses all the time. Yes, this Mark II version of the lens does suffer from a tiny amount of chromatic aberrations and edge softness, but today, in combination with modern sensors, these imperfections are actually desirable. Firstly, to give the image some character, but to also stamp your artistic intentions into the image before a grade is applied. The 24-105 is also stabilized, which is a huge bonus for a cheap, versatile lens. And although the stabilization works exceptionally well on older Canon cameras, where it really shines is with global shutter cameras like the Red Komodo or this Blackmagic Production 4K, as you can eliminate all of the micro jitters from the footage in camera without a gimbal. But then there's the benefits you will receive with any of Canon's modern C-line or R-mount cameras. Obviously, I'm talking about autofocus, and this 20-year-old lens, when paired with any modern camera from Red, Sony, Panasonic, or Fuji when using the right adapter, is also going to gain reliable AF. In fact, this lens is more useful now from the rise of continuous AF face, eye, and subject tracking than ever before. In fact, that goes for all of the lenses that we're going to discuss here today. Yes, this lens does make that horrible Canon AF clicky-click noise, as do all of these lenses, but it doesn't bother photographers, and it's not that much of a big deal for cine work unless you have your primary mic mounted near the lens, say for documentary work. New, this fully weather-sealed lens retails for around $1,300, but I would not recommend that because used units sell for around $150, which is what I paid for this one. Alright, next on the hit list is the Canon EF35 f1.4 L Mark II Prime, which for me is about as good as it gets. This lens has distortions, aberrations, refractions, flaring, and ghosting well controlled. The focus drive can be manually overridden, which is great for video, and like the 24-105, it feels like it has been given a second life from all of Canon's AF improvements over the last decade, which is amazing considering that it only cost $450 Australian dollars, which was cheaper than the new Sigma f1.4 equivalent at the time. But if you look at the prices now, they range from around $2,000 at B&H all the way down to what I paid used. So just pay to look around. Now, if I was stranded on a desert island and I could only choose one lens, man, this would be a super hard decision between this one and another lens I will talk about in a bit. Why? Because what makes this lens so special is its slightly wider field of view when compared to a 50, plus its fast aperture. So tight spaces, no problem. Minimal lighting, no problem. And that's why this lens is used by stacks of photojournalists and documentarians. Personally, I have used this lens on just about every type of job that you can think of, and it's one of my main go-to lenses for this very channel. It reproduces natural colors accurately, it's super sharp, is responsive, and weather sealed. And as with all of these lenses, it can literally be mounted to any mirrorless camera system, making it a super safe bet right now and well into the future. Up next is what I believe to be the best Canon wide-angle lens ever made, the EF14 f.28 L USM Mark II, which has recently been replaced by the RF14-35 F4, which I reviewed up here. But if I had to choose between owning either the ultra-wide RF14-35 over the 40mm prime, I'm choosing the better built prime every day of the week. Obviously, one is a zoom and the other is a prime, so they both have their advantages and disadvantages. But there's one thing the EF version can do that the RF version can't, and that's be used with other manufacturers' camera systems and be speed boosted. And as technology has also advanced other camera components, the once considered hindrances of the lens, like the lack of the ability to use filtration or that the lens is not stabilized, have now been resolved via lens adapters and IBIS. What I will say is this: the 14-35 zoom is not as wide or anywhere near as sharp corner to corner as the much faster 14mm prime, but it is more versatile because of the zoom range. Both have excellent AF, but the EF prime is louder. Both are as sticky as each other, and that's really a testament to Canon's AF system and its implementation of legacy glass into newer camera bodies. What I do love about the prime is that it forces me to move my feet instead of lazily zooming in, which dramatically changes the feeling and presence of a subject in the frame. And when the subject is placed up close to the lens, you do get quite a stunning focus roll-off. There is a little bit of chroma and vignetting around the edges, where we can see a slight darkening of the image and some lying sources. But you have to remember that the 14mm is a super wide-angle lens, and overall Canon did an amazing job at controlling flares, chromatic aberration, and barrel distortion, which quickly disappears to virtually nothing as the subject distance increases. The lens also doesn't breathe much when focus pulling, so if you're like me and you're a fan of that ultra-wide photography and cinematography, this is one of the must-have Canon lenses because of its ability to be adapted. New, it isn't cheap at around $2,100 US, but used, it can be had from anywhere between $300 and $600, which is a bargain for any L series lens of this quality. Another forgotten Canon EF lens is the 17-40mm F4 L USM zoom, which for me is the best lightweight EF zoom lens you can buy. It's dramatically lighter than the 16-35 L f.28, which is nearly 300 grams heavier. It also cost about a quarter of the money new at around $600 US when on sale, which is awesome considering it is only one stop slower, it's still weather sealed, and is an internal focusing zoom lens, meaning it's perfect for gimbals. Again, for a lens that was released a long time ago, it easily covers full frame, and the AF system works tremendously well. For photos, it's fast, accurate, and quiet, and for video, my experience with the AF has been that it's just super sticky and ultra reliable. It really is amazing value considering that it's very flare resistant, it's nice and sharp in the center of the frame, retains great contrast, chromatic aberration is well controlled, but you will see some, in the corners past 24mm. It also has a good minimum focusing distance of about 28 centimeters, and it can be used with speed boosters, making it an f2.8 lens for, say, a Canon C70, an R7, or even an EOS R in 10-bit video mode. This lens will also work natively on any Canon R or C-line camera, and while it may not be stabilized, you can buy it for well under $200, so it is just worth a look. Finally, the lens that so many people wanted back in the day is the Canon 50mm f1.2 L USM prime lens. There's been so much written and talked about this lens, it's hard to tell you anything new. So I'm not going to discuss this lens technically apart from saying this. This lens is phenomenal. Optically, it has a very sharp but creamy look. It's small, doesn't weigh much, and it's easy to pull focus with when wide open. This lens was actually the first EF lens I ever bought, and yes, I bought it used. At the time, I just made the switch from film to a 5D Mark II, and this combination of lens and that camera helped me develop a style that I'm known for commercially today. And while this is the most expensive secondhand EF lens I have ever purchased, it has delivered an ROI like any other lens that I've ever bought since. Even my Cine version of this lens hasn't even come close. Used, this lens cost me $700 Australian dollars, so that's probably around $450 to $500 at the time, which I have literally made back 1,000 times over. So to answer the question I asked her, if I was stuck on a desert island and I could only have one lens, well, this would be it. And if you have the money spare and you're in the Canon ecosystem, or you have the ability to adapt EF glass to your camera, this is the lens you should absolutely get. These are not being manufactured anymore, so grab one now before they disappear or just get crazy expensive. Now, you may or may not agree with my 5 lenses I've put forward. Please just remember that the EF lens lineup is the largest in the world. There's just a lot of lenses to choose from. And if I haven't mentioned a lens that you think should be added in the list, then please drop it in a comment below. And if you'd like to see more content from me or more content like this, please consider subscribing or supporting the channel with a super thanks. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Swipe up, tag your friends, like and subscribe, comment below. If I make this follow, don't let this flop.